And thank you again for joining us for the Dave LewAllen Podcast on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, every place you find your favorite podcasts. And we thank you for the support of this podcast. 1 year and starting year 2. Happy to have you along, happy to have your support. Would really appreciate you continuing to spread the word of this podcast if you like what you hear, what you see, and share it with your friends and family as well. Today we're going to talk some baseball, and I'm very happy to do that and happy to bring aboard one of the heroes of the 1984 Tigers World Championship season. He is now an analyst with Ballys on the Tigers broadcasts, and what a close to the season it has been for the Detroit Tigers, reaching the postseason. Dan Petry joining me today to talk some baseball on the Dave LewAllen Podcast. Dan, thank you for the time. Thank you for this. And boy, has this been an exciting run to the postseason for these Tigers.
Well, Dave, thanks for having me on. And yeah, it never gets old talking about Tiger baseball. And yes, what a finish and what a wonderful weekend, too. I know the last couple of games didn't turn out the way the Tigers wanted to, but just the atmosphere down there on Friday night with 44,000 people down there, it just reminded you of those days back in 2006 and those playoff runs, the World Series in 2012. And just to see the electricity in that ballpark again was so much fun. And hopefully, the Tigers can have some home games in the upcoming playoffs and get that atmosphere back.
And that Friday night you mentioned, the night that the Tigers clinched their postseason spot, there's nothing that quite matches the excitement of a baseball pennant race and, a clinch experience. And you went through that certainly in your time with the Tigers. Playoffs and, in the case of 84, World Series championship as well. Nice to have that feeling back at Comerica Park.
Yeah, it's just the way they did it on Friday night, though, was, the season really kind of came alive when they started using just 2 starting pitchers, and they were going with the opener and the bulk innings guy, and that's the way Friday played out. They used Hannafy to start, and then Brant Herter, who's done just a tremendous job being kind of the bulk guy, and then turning it over to the that back end of that bullpen, who's just been marvelous too. So it was only fitting that it was kind of one of those bullpen games that solidified them making the playoffs. And just watching these guys and how they did it and how incredible it was. And it's going to be just very interesting to see how much havoc they can wreak on the rest of baseball.
Well, and, you mentioned about the pitching. I mean, we've never seen this really before, right? Where you've got, 2 starters, and then the rest of the guys are bullpen guys. You're cobbling together a start, multiple nights of a week. I mean, that's crazy that you can do that and do it successfully.
Well, I think that was when they first started doing it. It was, well, how long can they possibly do this? Is this going to last for a week? Is this going to last for 2 weeks? Certainly it's not going to last for 7 weeks. That I think is what they ended up using it for. But it worked so well, and the reason why was just because of those bulk inning guys. I mean, I mentioned Brant Herter and Kenta Maeda shifted from the rotation, into the bulk innings guy, and Ty Madden, and even Brian Sammons, he did a nice job before getting sent down. So without those guys, if they would have come in and gotten lit up and lasted only a couple of innings, and then they had to use all the other arms down there, I'm not sure it would have worked. But every time they had that opener, those openers were incredible. But then the bulk inning guys, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They were going 4, 5, 6 innings, sometimes 7 in that bulk innings to save the rest of the bullpen. And that's why it ended up working. Now, certainly they didn't win all the games, but again, they were in all of those games because those guys were able to give them a lot of innings. And it worked out just that you had 4 of those bulk inning guys and Tarek Skubal and then Kader Montero, of course. So that's why it ended up working. When you sprinkle in an off day here and there, then you had the 2 starting pitchers, then those bulk innings guys, that pretty much became your rotation, and that's why it worked.
All right, you mentioned Skubal, so let's go there right now. What an incredible season.
Yeah.
I mean, just dominant, and one of those guys where when he sets his foot on the mound, you got a great chance to win that night.
Yeah, and every good team needs an ace like that. But, I mean, you talk about incredible. I mean, he had all the expectations to win a Cy Young Award, which, that comes with a lot. After the September he had last year, everybody said, well, he's the favorite for the Cy Young Award. And he didn't disappoint anybody from the very first start to the very last start. He was incredible. And then, to me, where I shake my head is the Triple Crown. And I know Chris Sale did it in the National League, and I know it's, Justin Verlander has done it, but it's incredible. I don't care if it's a hitter or a pitcher. I mean, just to do one of those, just to lead the league in wins is incredible. And then just to lead the league in ERA is incredible. Lead the league in strikeouts is incredible. But to do all 3 of those during the course of 1 year, I just shake my head in amazement that any pitcher can pull that off. And I'm just glad he was on the Tigers.
Yeah, incredible year. Kudos to him and all of the honors that will follow for sure. But let's go back trade deadline. I mean, Jack Flaherty did well as a free agent acquisition. He's traded. Several other guys moved out as well. The Tigers were selling, or so we thought. I mean, they were selling, but look what happened after the trade deadline. I mean, in '84, and we're going to talk about your great 1984 season, but the start you had in '84, the finish for these Tigers, it was somewhat similar in that, they were the hottest team and the best record in baseball to close the year.
Yeah, I just think back at that trade deadline. It was, at that particular time, it didn't look like, the odds were against the Tigers. And I think maybe that, I don't think anybody threw in the towel, certainly, because there's a lot of baseball left to be played. And as AJ always preaches, you're going out and you're still trying to win every game. It's just, okay, now how are you going to do that? And what players are you going to use to do that? And, they kind of waved the white flag a little bit, but all the people that were called up. The other thing is that you forget about is they got healthy at a good time, too. Kerry Carpenter came back. Riley Green came back. You can't take 2 bats out of the lineup like those 2 and expect your offense to do much of anything. So they came back. Then you started getting those pieces back up from the minor leagues where, Spencer Torkelson and Parker Meadows, my goodness, what an impact he had, on the team. So it was getting healthy and those guys coming back up from AAA that we'd seen, but coming back and being an important part of this year. So that's where it all kind of gelled together. But again, Jack Flaherty has done a marvelous job for the Dodgers. Yeah. So it's not, somebody that you can't, you say, boy, that would be great if he was still on the team. But it just goes back to that pitching staff and how well they did. But healthy, getting the pieces from AAA to come up, offensively, and then that bullpen. That's where it all gelled, so you had both aspects. The other thing is that they were going to be in every game, so they weren't going to get blown out of anything. They were going to somehow be in every game, and then it was up to AJ to get the right matchup at the right time late in those ball games to win them.
Yeah, and how about the job that A.J. Hinch did? I don't know that he's going to win the Manager of the Year, but I tell you, if you're a Tigers fan and you've watched this team all season, you'd vote for A.J. Hinch as Manager of the Year. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's been some incredible managers, obviously, but and it would be a great thing for AJ, but I think they all just kind of dismissed that just for the fact of how proud he is of the team. But he's just done a remarkable job, and I really just it started from the very beginning of the season. No, I'll go back to even last year. If you remember how strong they finished last year to finish in second place. So he takes this team into this year and makes sure that he keeps everybody strong. He takes a lot of criticism for, why can't a guy pitch at the back end and close out 2 games of a doubleheader?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because we're in April and May, I'm not going to do that right now. And then, well, why can't they do a multi-inning save, so an inning and a third or inning and 2/3? Because it's April and May. I'm not going to burn a guy out right now. And then, well, how come Riley's not playing? How come Torque's not playing? How come you're giving these guys the days off? It's because he's got that September, that crunch time. He's got everybody strong for that drive right there at the end. And he started it at the end of last year, at the beginning of this year, just keeping everybody strong. And hopefully they haven't been worn down too much, kind of chasing this playoff spot, and can stay strong and are strong for however long this playoff run lasts.
And as you say, guys got healthy, and, a Colt Keith, arrives on the scene. Late in the season, Jace Young comes up, Dylan Dingler. I mean, and Meadows and Torkelson comes back and looks like maybe he's got more of it figured out. I mean, all of these things, it was like the perfect storm in a positive way for these Tigers.
Yeah, and the big guy, we talked about Jack Flaherty, but Trey Sweeney to come up, when Javi Baez went down with the hip injury. And, you didn't know what you had in Trey Sweeney. I mean, heck, he's in the Dodger organization. Then he comes over here, and he's in AAA for a couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden, he's in the big leagues, and he's like, well, wait a minute. I was just in AAA with a completely different organization. Now I'm thrust into the big leagues trying to prove myself there, and I'm playing one of the most important positions on the field, and it's a playoff chase. So there was a lot on his plate, and he's one of those guys that certainly looks like he's a high ceiling. It's just he's going to continue to get better.
Well, and the catch that he made against the Royals, saved the game, maybe saved the season for the Tigers. It was an incredible play.
Yeah, and just that Houdini act that Bo Brisky was able to somehow, to do, and that catch was just, you're right, and it was just a valuable lesson that was learned on that road trip in Kansas City, that a ball dropped, not quite in the same spot, but almost, where they kind of converged together down the left field line. And he learned from that mistake and said, forget this. I'm going after it, and I'm going after it with everything I got. I'm throwing myself on the line, my body on the line. And Riley Green and Trey Sweeney got, banged up a little bit. Thank goodness both of them came out of that unscathed.
All right, so how much fun was this for you, watching this team and in your role as, an analyst, whether it be in the studio or at the ballpark, in the booth? How much have you enjoyed this and this opportunity, to stay with the Tigers in a new capacity?
Well, most of the guys, maybe half, right? I've gotten to know and have watched them progress, each and every year, and get older and get stronger and mature. I mean, there's a lot that has gone into those guys, the Riley Greens and the Spencer Torkelsons, Jake Rogers, guys like that. But you find yourself rooting so hard for them because they're every day, and every day you walk in that clubhouse, they're there and they're available for you to ask them questions and hey, what are you going through right now? And what are you working on? And just anything that you might come up with. and they're always available, and you just root so hard for them. So now with the young guys coming in and getting to know them, just although briefly,
sure.
I mean, it's incredible that you're not in that clubhouse, you're not a part of that team, but you take it upon yourself because you want it so bad for them, because again, you like them, you like these guys. Matt Dearling comes over, he's not in a trade, and guys like that, Zach McKinstry from outside the organization, and they're just wonderful players, but wonderful guys, and you root hard for them, and that's why it's been so satisfactory to me, is just to see what they've accomplished and what they've developed as young kids and top prospects to where they are now. And they still have got a long way to go, even though they're in the playoffs now. They're only going to continue to get better.
Well, and there's some similarities, maybe it's a stretch, but some similarities, I think, between this group, the Tigers once again finally producing some significant homegrown players, to what, you guys had in the build up to, the 84, the success before and after that. That team was a homegrown group of guys as well. Some similarities. Let's see if this group can match, the great success that your group had in 84. But there's some similarities, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Scott Harris has stated as much, as that's what he wanted to do. He didn't want to go out and spend a lot of money in free agency on long-term deals, because he didn't want a position to be blocked, because he knew there was good young talent getting close and getting ready to arrive, and he didn't want their call-ups to be blocked by somebody. And that turned out to be just genius, because they traded away some veterans and brought up those kids. But the other thing that the similarity is that they built from within. The foundation was built from within, and then they added the outside pieces to kind of take them over the top. But the other similarity is how close knit these teams are. In '84, we were an extremely close knit bunch, because we had spent time together in the minor leagues, and then we spent a lot of time losing together, in running up to that year in '84. We also won a lot of games, but we had to learn how to win, and taking our share of lumps and losses, and that's what this group has done, and that just brings you even closer as a group. And as we witnessed on Friday night in their celebration, you see just how close they are as a team.
So this excitement of the 2024 season, it comes 40 years after your 1984 World Championship team. This has been a big year for all of you guys from that team, because you've been able to celebrate again and celebrate this milestone. And there have been any number of events, including those at the ballpark, celebrating your team and the success. What has that meant to you going through all of that with your guys?
Well, I mean, every 5 years, first of all, it's great that the ball club continues to have events like that and throws them and brings us all back for those celebrations. And, we always have a couple of names that have to be announced that are no longer with us, which certainly, slaps you in the face a little bit. And you realize how lucky you are each 5-year reunion that you have, that you're still around to be a part of it. So we don't take that for granted. And it was so fun that weekend, and it went by so fast because of how enjoyable it is, just to spend that weekend and take in a couple of games together. But man, when it's all over, you just went, that was so much fun, and it went way too fast. But the other thing, and just to kind of bring in this year's team to that celebration, is when we were getting ready to go out to the field, every one of the players of this year's team was in the dugout. And AJ's big on that. He's big on the history of the game and trying to teach his his young kids about the history of the game. Each and every one of them were in that dugout, and they were talking to everybody. Now, granted, I know them, so they're saying hello and, that kind of thing. But a lot of guys, Darrell Evans was standing right by me. Guys were grabbing Darrell just to say, hi, Darrell, and Darrell was talking to them. And that was the neat thing. And it wasn't just, AJ's making us sit in this dugout for this stupid celebration. I don't want to be here. No, they were engaged in that celebration. And again, that just goes back and just tells you how special this 2024 version of the Tigers is.
Well, 40 years doesn't seem possible. I mean, growing up as a kid, the 68 Tigers were my team. 84, the first championship team I had a chance to cover. So the memories all these years later remain vivid for me, and certainly you guys lived it, and so they've got to be forever ingrained to you as well.
Well, yeah, and I remember 68 also. I mean, I grew up in California, and obviously you don't have the same kind of coverage as you do now, but even in California, my dad took me to a game that Denny McClain, I think, won his 29th game, I think it was, something like that, out at Angel Stadium. So I was following the Tigers there. I had a friend that lived down the street. We used to play up against my garage door. I was the Tigers, he was the Cardinals, so I had all the stances down at the Cardinals or the Tigers, and then getting signed by the Tigers and then getting to meet those guys. I mean, it was a big deal. Growing up idolizing those guys, and then to be around a good majority of them. Again, that's where that history comes in, and why you should be, part in, and enjoy that, what 68 achieved, but also what we achieved. And certainly nobody's going to forget that for a long time.
And you remain now a link, to these current Tigers, to that history, and given the overall history of the Detroit Tigers franchise, those kinds of things are important, remain important, will be going forward as well.
Yeah, and I know some of the guys, have said it where, for a long time it was, you always want to be the last championship team. Well, 40 years later, a lot of us are sitting there, okay, we've had a nice little run. Now it's time to have somebody else take over that and become the champions. And, we'll see if this group can do it, this year or in the years to come. But I think many of us are ready to, turn that page and say, come on, let's see who that new group is going to be, and let somebody, take the mantle and run with it.
Well, but what your team accomplished with that 35-5 start, wire to wire, winning the world championship, as a player, I mean, that's it. That's the pinnacle. That's what you play, to do.
And that's, like I said, when you're 10 years old and you're standing, playing, mimicking the 1968 World Series, you think, one day you want to be that, in that game, that seventh game of the World Series, or in the World Series, and be the hero or do something, special. And yes, that's what everybody dreams about. And that's what these guys are doing right now. They've had all those dreams when they were kids, and now they're going to be in that position to, see where they go and come up with the big game or the big hit or, the big play, whatever it might be. And that's exactly what you dream about. And a lot of people are not able to achieve that and never get to that moment. And sometimes you only get one chance, Some people are lucky enough to get a couple of chances. So even that one chance that you might get, you certainly have to take advantage of it.
Well, look at the 2006 and 2012 teams. I mean, I still can't believe that 2006 team didn't beat the Cardinals in the World Series. I mean, to me, that was the most disappointing miss, in my lifetime that that I remember about a Detroit Tigers team, because the Cardinals barely got in, and I thought the Tigers were better and were primed to win a World Series that year.
Well, that just shows you how hard it is to win, let alone once, let alone back to back. But that team in 2006 was so good, and remember they had that long layoff that probably hurt them. That week layoff for the Cardinals to hurry up and figure out if they were going to make it, and that certainly hurt. And then that 2012, where they started in San Francisco, and it was like, well, wait, gosh, how in the world did that happen? And even 2013, that was a team that was so strong, and that David Ortiz grand slam in Boston. But it just you can have a great team, but momentum's a funny thing. And that other team, as Jim Leland always said, they pass out scholarships too. And they're they want to win it just as bad as you. They've been dreaming about it since they were kids also. So it's a very difficult thing to do, and that's why it's so special when you do finally come out on top.
One more comparison with 2024 and your team in 84. It just seems like, and again, the Tigers aren't there yet, but it seems like they have understood that anybody can be the hero, if you will, on a given day, and that it requires role players and different people coming through at key points, during a game or during the season. And certainly in 84, I mean, it was Jack and you and Willie Hernandez and of course Lance and Gibby and Tram and Lou, but you had a team of guys, and you were a team, and there were guys who stepped in, who had important roles. I mean, Bergman and Berenguer. I mean, you can go through the list that maybe they didn't play every day, but there were moments and there were roles for them. Some comparison again, or is that just the essential for any winning, successful baseball team to have that?
Yeah, I think you do need a complete roster. But I think that's what makes this team, this 2024 version of the Tigers, so unpredictable, is because they do count on the entire roster. Let's take, the Yankees, for instance, where you've got Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. Now, they certainly have other pieces, but if you're going up against those teams, you're sitting there going, man, those are two guys I really got to be careful about. Where these Tigers, you're kind of going, well, gosh, we've got Riley Green plays every day, but, Kerry Carpenter, may or may not be in against Framber Valdez, and Cole Keith may or may not be in there, so you don't know what to expect. So how do you game plan for these Tigers? It's like, well, I'm going to start this way, but man, AJ's going to make these moves, and then I'm going to have to counter with that. And then if the game doesn't go according to plan and it shifts gears, then you got to do all kinds of different moves to counteract the situation in the game. So that's why they're dangerous. But you always need a full roster. But there's always a good majority of players that you are going to count on. But this version, I think, definitely uses everybody and will count on everybody to see how far they end up going.
Yeah. Well, it has been exciting. Hopefully this is a team on the ascent, that will continue to get better and to grow and to have some great success. Dan, I've loved your work on the Ballys broadcast. It looks like you're having fun. How can it not be, with a winning season like this? I want to thank you for the time today that you've given us. Continued success moving forward. You're an important link, past to the present for this franchise, and I so appreciate your time here today.
No, my pleasure, Dave. And I just feel like, I'm just one of the most luckiest people to be even associated with the team and to be able to be a part of so many games, especially this year. It just makes you kind of feel like a player again, and I'm just very, very lucky to have any kind of association with the team, and it's been a blast, and I can't wait to see what happens with these guys.
All right, Dan, thank you. Dan Petry, former Tigers pitcher, now part of the team at Ballys, bringing the games to all of us. We thank you for your time, Dan, and continued good luck. And as always, we thank you for joining us for the Dave LewAllen Podcast, again, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. Tell a friend, share this with them as well. We'll be back with more guests very soon. In the meantime, stay safe, be kind. See you next time.